Hi everyone, this is Jessica Van Dalen. I'm a registered and licensed dietitian as well as the diabetes educator here at Boone County Hospital. Just wanted to go over a few tips and tricks that I've kind of learned and like to recommend for whoever comes to see me over the years. So I know holidays can kind of be stressful for a lot of people, especially when it comes to all the food, usually lower exercise, and you're not getting outside as much just due to the weather. So sit back and let's go through some food fun and the holidays. So a lot of common thoughts that I hear people say around the holidays are, I'm going to work all of this food off. I need to run X amount of miles in the morning so I don't gain weight. Or I can't eat all day today so I can gorge myself tomorrow. We need to throw out all of that Halloween candy or I'm going to eat it all in one sitting. It's the holidays, so I'm going to go all out and eat it while I can, really gorge myself on it. January 1st, I'll really dig in and start that new diet, start fresh. Or another one is, I need to avoid all sweets and baked goods, or I'm definitely going to gain weight. I feel like we've probably all kind of had some of these thoughts go through our head at some point in time, or we have heard a friend or a relative kind of voice these opinions out loud, or even sometimes it's all over social media, news. A lot of people are just kind of spouting a lot of this inner thoughts that they're having. And it can really just kind of add to the stress and pressure. And it really takes away the enjoyment that can come with spending time with our family, having those, foods that we always look forward to around this time of year. So the issue with some of these common thoughts is, if you're trying to work off all this food or, saying like, I need to run 10 miles to work off this piece of pie that I had, you're then using movement as a punishment and for enjoying that food. This can really harm your relationship with physical activity and food because you're viewing it as more of a punishment for something you enjoy, but then you're not even really enjoying it. And so then it's harder to want to move your body because then you associate that with a negative connotation of I'm punishing myself. You're not doing it for the act of enjoying the movement, enjoying how you feel after, enjoying the endorphins, or simply just enjoying that food in general. When you say things like, I can't eat at all today so I can gorge myself tomorrow, you're heavily restricting what you're eating. And that can impact your metabolism and digestion, especially if you kind of fall into that cycle over time where you just find yourself restricting and gorging. It can be really hard to get out of that cycle, especially as you kind of are training your brain to get used to this cycle. So then, you might find yourself restricting even more and then gorging yourself even more. And it's just really, really hard to break. I know Halloween's already passed already, but I'm sure we probably all still have a little bit of that candy hanging around. Or if you did throw it all out, what I often see with Halloween, people will have the candy fairy come to take away all the candy after a while, or I've seen some dentists doing like a buyback thing for candy, or people just simply throwing it in the trash. Like, okay, you can have 10 pieces, but then we're going to throw it away. This is putting candy on a pedestal and we're deeming it off limits. So by having this mentality towards candy, yes, candy isn't going to, provide us with that long lasting energy. If we eat too much, we're probably going to have a stomach ache or feel a little sick. But we have to allow ourselves to still have it because otherwise we are going to still find ourselves wanting to gorge on it or craving it, or the instant we see it, we have all these thoughts popping in our head. We want to try and kind of view it as something that's a little bit more mundane, something that, okay, when I really want it, I can have a few pieces and then I'll be good. We won't have as much of a high craving impact with just viewing that food. I have chocolate kisses that are still in my pantry from probably 2 Christmases ago. I probably do need to throw them out by now because they're probably disgusting. But that's because I've heavily worked on how I view candy. I don't put it on this pedestal. I, allow myself to have a few pieces probably every single day. Definitely not the chocolate kisses right now, but, I still allow myself to have those things and I don't view it as this really highly rewarded food, something that's put on a pedestal, deemed better than all other foods, so I can have a much more relaxed response to eating that candy. And the one thing that I really like to preface with this is if we are modeling that type of behavior, our kids are going to see that and do that too. So if you have a child who is constantly asking for candy or constantly asking for sweets, or when you do let them have them, they're just constantly gorging themselves on it, it's because they're following the behavior that you're modeling. You're putting that food on a pedestal for them. Now, it's really common for kids when, it's like their first Halloween, they first fully wrap their heads around it, to always be asking for that stuff. But if you just kind of let them have a few days where they can just kind of go crazy with the candy, sit and talk with them about it, they might then eventually just kind of move on from it and only want a few pieces. But we'll talk about a little more of that later. Another common phrase I hear is it's the holidays, so I'm going to go all out and eat while I can. January 1st, I'll start that new diet. This is kind of giving yourself that mentality that this food is only temporary. So again, you're going to be restricting yourself. So you might find yourself eating in preparation. Like, okay, this is the only time I'm going to get to eat this food. So, I'm really, really going to gorge myself on it. This is kind of the last hurrah. And again, you're kind of putting yourself in that binge restrict recycle. You're putting that food on that pedestal. So it's just kind of emitting a more intense response to it. And then the final phrase was, I need to avoid all sweets or baked goods, or I'm going to gain weight. These foods are put on that pedestal again. You're deeming them off limits. This is going to cause you to think about them more often, and it will be more difficult it'll be more difficult to control portions when you do. Another thing to mention, it's normal to gain a little bit of weight in winter. We're not as physically active. We're a little bit more cold. It's our body's innate response to put on a few pounds to act as, insulation, keep us warm. But also, you really have to eat a lot of food in order to see a true weight gain. Now, around the holidays, some people might weigh themselves more often, and they might say, oh my goodness, I gained like 5 pounds from one day. From Thanksgiving, I gained 5 pounds. Well, when you think about it, a lot of those foods are likely high in sodium. You might be drinking alcohol, few more sweets, maybe not drinking as much water. So you're going to have a lot more water retention. You're going to kind of hold on to some of that a little bit more. So it's not that you've gained fat, it's more so just you're putting on some of that water weight. You're kind of holding on to things a little bit more. Maybe you're a little constipated because you didn't have as much fiber as what you normally have. So all things to just kind of keep in mind with that. So with the holidays, a lot of people might start feeling a little bit more stressed, especially with, food. So some of those common stressors are, I'm going to gain weight. Maybe you have some family matters that just kind of emit more of a stress response. Finances, food access can go down for a lot of people, and just transportation. If we just had a really bad snowstorm, trying to figure out how to get to your family's holidays or making it up because you couldn't go to that holiday. I know we didn't get to go, so now we're making it up. So all that can add a lot of stress. Now, having high amounts of stress does impact the body. So it can decrease your quality of sleep. You might be a little bit more restless, might be waking up a little bit more throughout the night, might have trouble falling asleep. And you're kind of messing with that natural circadian rhythm. Anytime we do that, that can also increase stress. So, it's kind of a push and pull thing kind of going on there. But really any sort of major change in your sleep can emit lots of different hormonal changes, blood sugar changes, and that then can have effects from that as well. So stress increases sugar cravings, but also if you have lack of sleep, your body's needing that energy. It's wanting that fuel to be able to kind of push through and go about your day. So a lot of times it'll increase our sugar cravings, because what's the best way to get a quick form of energy? Well, simple carbs. So increased sugar cravings, it also can emit a dopamine response, which can temporarily decrease that stress that we have going on. And then you can kind of fall into a little bit of a roller coaster there, because, if you're having high amounts of sugar like that, your blood sugar can spike and fall, which you're going to feel tired again. And again, it's going to emit more sugar cravings. So then you kind of are on that roller coaster. We're like, oh my goodness, I ate some carbs. I ate some simple carbs to feel a little bit better. I feel good for a little bit. And then a few minutes later, you probably don't feel so good again. And so then this cycle repeats itself. Stress can cause more weight gain. If we're not getting that good sleep, if we're maybe not eating as balanced of meals day in and day out, having some more inflammation in the body, that can cause some weight gain, because again, we're maybe also not moving as much too, because we are more tired. So, it's kind of a little frustrating there, if weight gain is a stressor, and then high amounts of stress can cause weight gain. So that's a little fun there too, to kind of deal with that. Higher blood pressure, it can definitely increase our blood pressure, which just is not safe in general. And then mood swings, you might be a little bit more irritable, and a lot of that is, tied to lack of sleep. And, stress, we're just going to kind of have different feelings and emotions throughout the day with that. So some more mood swings, which just, again, can lead to more stress as well. Another major point I want to make is your relationship with food has major health risks tied to it. So if you have a negative relationship with food, an unhealthy relationship with food, it can increase your risk for other health conditions. So a few things especially is, if we are in that kind of binge restrict cycle, or Intermittent fasting is kind of a big thing that's really common these days, especially around the holidays. I'm not going to eat all day so that I can go all out for Thanksgiving dinner, or just kind of really, I'm going to eat super, super healthy today, but then, oh my goodness, I can't hold out. I don't have enough willpower. And then you kind of find yourself binging on all the Christmas cookies that are laying around. Those are all some unhealthy relationship with food, ideals around food. It's not the best thing for you. You're not finding that kind of nice medium ground. So having that type of relationship with food can increase your risk for diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and eating disorders. Eating disorders, especially because, if you have unhealthy relationship with food, that can just only progress, especially if the results you're getting from that unhealthy relationship with food is only progressing in the way that we don't want it to. That can just kind of make our actions and behaviors even more negative, and then it's just kind of a domino effect. For diabetes, if you're participating in intermittent fasting or binging and restricting, you're having huge fluctuations in your blood sugar by that. And if you have a genetic predisposition, or if you have other risk factors that increase your risk for diabetes, by participating in behaviors like that, you're just kind of putting a lot more physical stress on your body. You're making your metabolism, your digestive system kind of, not work for a little bit and then really kick in and work. And so you're kind of going to extremes. And so over a long period of time, if we consistently are putting our bodies through this, that can lead to it to start to kind of malfunction per se. And so then we might start having more blood sugar unbalances, which can lead to, like prediabetes, and then that can progress to type 2 diabetes. So just a thing to keep in mind. Heart disease. If you're having high amounts of stress, again, that can increase your risk for high blood pressure. So if we oftentimes have an unhealthy relationship with food, meal times, snack times, holidays become more stressful. And so we're putting that stress on our bodies. And so that can increase the risk for heart disease. It might also mean that, if we're binging and restricting, again, your body has to work harder in those times. So your body has to work hard to maintain your energy when you're not eating, but then it also has to work really hard to digest and send those nutrients where it needs to go in that small amount of time that you are allowing yourself to eat. So that can, put a lot of pressure on your heart, put a lot of pressure just on your body in general. And then, of course, stroke. If you have an unbalance in your blood sugar, if you have high blood pressure, if you're maybe not taking care of any other medical conditions, if you are having those extremes in your diet, that can just increase risk of stroke because, again, high stress, comorbidities kind of happening there, that just can cause an adverse effect to happen. So yes, we have all of these fun things that we kind of find ourselves dealing with around the holidays. So what are we supposed to do about it? Well, the purpose of food is, enjoyment. A big part of it is quality of life when it comes to food. Yes, it is for fuel. Yes, certain nutrients are going to give our bodies what we need. So we want to focus on that, but we also want to focus on the fun parts around it too. Food just isn't supposed to be something that we just, have to participate in. It can be something that we get enjoyment out of. And by kind of focusing on, okay, I need to add some stuff to have some better nutrition, some better balance to feel good physically, but also mentally as well. So try to kind of find that good balance with it. Food around the holidays, it's a big part of our tradition. We're bringing our people together. We're building memories. A big part of some cultures, religion, all those things. So we don't want to be someone, at a holiday and Aunt Sally makes the most delicious pie. She's known for this pie, and we feel like we can't have it just because we're afraid of the repercussions that might come from that, potential very maybes that might come from it. So you see all of your family, friends enjoying this pie, raving about this pie. Maybe she tried something different this year, and oh my goodness, it's so much better. That's going to be a core memory for everyone else, and it's going to be a positive, lighthearted, fun memory. But for you might look back on that and be like, wow, that kind of sucks. Like, I didn't enjoy that. Everyone else was having a lot of fun. And then maybe you just don't have fun the rest of the day because everyone else was having fun. They moved on. They're having fun with other things, but it's still kind of hanging in your head. Like, wow, I didn't get to enjoy that. I just kind of sat back and just watched everyone. And it's totally okay if you didn't want the pie because it's just not something that you were feeling like having. That memory, that emotion will pass. It's different when it's tied to those negative emotions, those negative feelings. Like, I can't have it because I'm going to gain weight. It's bad for me, so I can't eat it. How we view it is really going to change how our response is and the memories that come with it. So these are just kind of, this was our Christmas day last year. I really like to dabble in the kitchen and just kind of experiment with a lot of things. So I do have a few recipes available, and that middle one there is my harvest salad that I have curated. But last year for Christmas, I made some homemade donuts. My son was so ecstatic about the pink frosting and sprinkles. Like, oh my goodness, that's so much fun. So we had donuts and breakfast sausage. And it was really fun. We really enjoyed it. And we had donuts probably for the next few days afterwards for breakfast as well, because they were there and they were fun. For lunch, I was like, okay, I'm feeling kind of a little bit lower energy. Need something to kind of help me feel better throughout the day. So I made this nice balanced salad. We did have some protein on the side with it, but had a lot of fiber, a lot of micronutrients, and that protein really had a nice balanced lunch so that we could feel better. We didn't have this balanced lunch because we had a quote unquote bad breakfast. We had this balanced lunch because, again, feeling low energy, didn't have as balanced of a breakfast, and we were kind of crashing. And when you have a toddler at home, you know how important it is to have that consistent energy to be able to keep up with them. So I just kind of made this nice little salad with some protein on the side, and we felt much better. And then for dinner, I made some nice homemade rolls. I had a nice little fruit salad. Not pictured is kind of our family tradition of our grandma's sugar cookies. So of course we had some of those for dessert with it as well. But we had a nice little balance there. Good amount of veggies, good amount of fiber, some protein. You can't see it there, but there's some lentils in that shepherd's pie. So we had a nice little balanced dinner, and we felt good for the day. We enjoyed our foods, we had stuff we liked, but we also had that balance with it where we physically felt good too. A lot of times what can happen around holidays as well, I forgot to mention this, is if you're having a lot of those simple carbs by itself, blood sugar can spike and crash. And again, I did kind of talk about this, I guess. But blood sugar can kind of spike and crash, and then that can elicit more cravings for that stuff. And so then you're just kind of chasing that all day long. So if we kind of add a little bit of balance in there, we're physically going to feel better with that while still enjoying the foods that we're wanting to enjoy. So the idea behind this is called nutrition by addition. So, you're identifying those foods that you really enjoy, but maybe aren't going to provide as much of a good feeling that you need with it, maybe not provide as much consistent energy, those micronutrients, fiber, all those things. So typically, Thanksgiving, I feel like a lot of people's plates will look like the one on the left. They'll have lots of turkey, maybe ham, a few dinner rolls, nice good serving of cranberry sauce, maybe some green bean casserole, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie, mac and cheese. Not that these things are bad, it's just these have a lot of simple carbs in them. So we're having quite a unbalanced meal, which is perfectly fine. If that's how you want to have your meal, perfectly fine. If it doesn't bother you, perfectly fine. But a lot of times people are going to feel really sleepy after this meal. And so then they might not feel as good, might not be able to partake in any festivities that happen after dinner. So whereas you try and kind of balance it out a little bit more, so half your plate, that fiber source, so maybe add a little bit of a salad with Thanksgiving or whatever meal you're having. Have a little bit more of those fibrous foods, have maybe a little bit less of the carbs. Like you can still have all those carb foods that you want, just maybe a little bit smaller of a portion. And then have that protein as you wanted it. Another thing I like to mention is have your dessert with the meal, if you have room for it. Having that dessert with that meal is A, we're maybe not going to eat nearly as much, and so we'll feel a little bit better, but B, it's going to provide more of that balance. So we're not just eating it by itself, so we're not going to, have a sugar rush and then a sugar crash later on. Having it with a little bit more balance. Or let's say you didn't have enough room and later on you do want some of that pie. Okay, maybe there's a little bit of leftover turkey or something that you could have with it to have a little bit more balance. Or maybe you do just want to have it by itself, because it's really not that big of a deal if you have a sugar rush and a sugar crash. Just knowing that, okay, I'm having some more cravings for sugar, for carbs, it's likely just from my blood sugar. So I'm just going to kind of maybe move around a little bit to get my blood sugar to kind of regulate a little bit more. Just kind of knowing that, okay, I'm not actually hungry right now. It's just my body's response to having such a simple carb by itself. So another tip that I like to do is thinking of your favorite recipes and trying to experiment with them, finding a way that you can enhance it to add a little bit more nutrient density to it so you do feel better. One of my favorite meals growing up was sloppy joes. We used my grandma's recipe, and it had lots of sugar in it. We would usually just have the meat with the sauce on a white bun, probably maybe like some fries or a baked potato, something like that. So it's very simple carb dense and usually don't feel too good after you kind of have a meal like that. So how I curated this recipe, I swapped out the meat for lentils to add in a little bit more fiber. You could still do the meat. It just kind of depends on your family's preference. But then I added some carrots and peppers into the sauce and cut back on the sugar amount as well. Yes, it's maple syrup. It's still sugar. It all digests the same, but it's not nearly as much as our home recipe that we used growing up. So just added some more vegetables to this recipe. It adds kind of a nice little crunch. It's, yes, a different texture, but it still tastes really good. And then swapping out that white bun for 100% whole wheat bun, again, for some extra fiber and protein. And then sometimes we do have fries as a side too, but we're having some broccoli and cauliflower with it usually when we make this. So we're having a really good amount of fiber. We're having an okay amount of protein. Lentils don't have as much protein as what meat would have, but you're still having some protein in there. And then you're having a little bit more fiber and protein with that whole wheat bun as well. So you'll find that you feel a lot better eating this meal. It still tastes just as good. We actually like this recipe better now because we notice how much better we feel after we eat it. And so we've really come to enjoy this recipe. This is one that I have also decided to share with as well. There's 2 other ones, just some dips that I've made, just again, to kind of add a little bit more into them to help you feel better after you eat them. So if you're wanting something a little bit sweet, just kind of helps you feel a little bit better. Nothing wrong with the original stuff. Again, just maybe trying to add some stuff on the side so that we feel a little bit better. So having this mindset of nutrition by addition can take away that restriction. We're not thinking of, oh my goodness, I can't have that, or I just need to completely avoid this. We're thinking of, okay, I really like pumpkin pie. What can I maybe have on the side so that I physically feel good after this too? And maybe not having half a pie in one sitting, we're having just a nice moderate pie slice. Now, if you're like me, I do completely cover it in Cool Whip, but I feel like that's just kind of how you have to eat pumpkin pie. So, still eating it how you want to enjoy it, but adding that stuff to the side so you physically feel good after as well. Now, to kind of get back to the sweets in general, how we navigate it with kids. So kids can kind of make it very complicated, especially, if they're used to having sweets as a reward. So like with potty training, some people do M&Ms as a reward, or, like schools, a lot of times if they hit a goal, they get a pizza party or an ice cream party or something like that. So a lot of society pushes food as a reward for kids. And so it's kind of putting it on this pedestal, which can be really hard to break. But if we're modeling different behavior at home, they're going to see that and they're going to start to kind of think of things differently. So some of my big tips when it comes to handling your relationship with food with kids is talking to them about how they feel. If you let them first few days after Halloween just kind of eat as much candy as they want, ask them how they feel. Does your stomach hurt right now? Are you maybe getting a little bit of a headache? Are you kind of getting sleepy? I know when I eat a lot of candy, I don't feel the best. And then maybe one night having a little bit of candy with dinner. That's what we've been doing, every night since Halloween. We've been having a few pieces of candy. Sometimes we have more, sometimes we have less. Sometimes we didn't even have any. Just to kind of make it more mundane, but also talking about, okay, see how much better we feel when we have this candy with our meal versus having a huge amount all by itself. So just talking about how you feel, seeing how they feel, see if they can kind of understand this a little bit. And let them experience that uncomfortable feeling. Now, I don't recommend it until they're about 3 years old, just because kids younger than that, the added sugar isn't necessarily something that they necessarily need. And it's a lot easier to navigate that with them because they still don't really have that much of an idea of the difference of foods or what they're getting. So I usually kind of wait until 3 years old to kind of go through this, because then also they can understand a little bit. They can identify, oh, I don't feel good. Oh, my stomach kind of hurts. So it's just a little bit of an easier process when we wait until age 3. Talking to them about how some foods make us physically feel good and some foods are for fun. Those fun foods are going to be the ones that if we eat them in a large amount, we're probably not going to feel too good. So we want to pair it with those foods that will feel good. And then, hey, we're going to feel good after we eat it. So trying to avoid using the words like bad or unhealthy or good, because adding those connotations to those foods can really, again, put it on that pedestal. It's insinuating restriction, and that can just kind of make our relationship with food worse. Hold the same enthusiasm for all foods. So if you have a kid who's really struggling with eating their vegetables and all they really want is candy, hold that same enthusiasm that you have for candy as you do for vegetables. Yeah, some people might not like broccoli, but still kind of go into like, ooh, this broccoli smells really good. Oh my gosh, it tastes really good. This seasoning I added to the broccoli really makes it taste really good. Or even if you don't like broccoli, I just don't really like this broccoli, but that's okay. I'm not going to eat the broccoli. I'm going to eat these green beans instead, because it's not like you like all that candy out there. Some people don't like black licorice. So think about it in that sense. Like, you're not going to go and be like, oh my goodness, black licorice, this is so good. No, you're going to be like, ew, that's gross. I don't like that. So just kind of hold that same enthusiasm for all foods, regardless of their nutrients. Trying to avoid using food as a reward. So trying to find replacement options. So like when we were potty training our toddler, we used stickers as our reward instead of food. So you go number 1 on the potty, you get 1 sticker. You go number 2, you get 3 stickers. And then we filled a sticker chart and you got to pick out a little toy. So trying to find alternatives instead of using those foods as a reward so that we can already start working on a healthier relationship with food. And then modeling that healthy relationship with food, trying to avoid some phrases that we often hear like, oh, I've been so bad, I ate so many sweets today. Maybe say, oh, I don't feel good, I ate quite a few fun foods today. Just trying to kind of change how you're wording things and just trying to be cognitive of what we're saying in front of our kids, because they really pick up on a lot of that. And then just have fun foods just because. Maybe it's a Tuesday night and we've got quite a bit of extra Halloween candy, or there's quite a few Christmas cookies left over. Okay, let's sit down and just have some. Doesn't have to be a special occasion, doesn't have to be a reason for it. Just, we're gonna do it just because. That can help create a neutral relationship with food by doing that as well. And then, like I said previously, serve them with a meal. Have them with a meal. Talk about how we feel so much better when we have it with a meal. You're likely gonna eat less if you have it with a meal. Let them eat it whenever. So if you're serving your dessert, we usually have dessert probably every night. I mean, there's definitely times that we don't, but I would say majority of the time we do. Sometimes my toddler eats the candy or cookie or dessert first, and sometimes he doesn't eat it at all. So, giving them that option, it really creates that independence, and it avoids putting our own thoughts around that food onto them so they can form their own opinions. And it just kind of helps them see that food as neutral. It's being served with the rest of our food, and they can kind of understand that balance and how they're going to feel better by having that balance. So these are just kind of some of my tricks and tips for the holidays with food. Feel free to reach out at my email. It's jvandalen@bchmail.org if you have any other questions. I do have some of those recipes that will be available at the library, or you can reach out and I can send a PDF file over with them. I hope you've learned something from today, and happy holidays.